When this started, I confess I did not understand. I guess maybe that's how it all turned out to be. Well, such a mess.
If you're new here, welcome. I'm Betsy Burris, a teacher, educator, and psycho coach. Every week, I podcast or write on Substack about using your emotions to feel better and teach better. Sometimes you'll hear stories of educators as told to me or sent into the Teaching Through Emotions hotline, all of them discussed with me and my co-host, Joe Johnson. And sometimes you'll hear an interview with someone who offers an interesting perspective on teaching and learning. We unpack it all here on the feed and on Substack. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, dear listeners. Today, we're talking with a teacher, Rachel Branham. It's her real name. She's agreed to let us use her real name, who's been in a TSG with me, a small one, just her and a friend. And here she is willing to talk with us about a brand new issue, or maybe it's the same old issue. Not sure. In any case, we'll be talking about Rachel's take on care in teaching. That's what we're hoping to talk about. Is it always appropriate? Is it always even possible? Rachel's going to make the case for detachment in teaching. I confess she's the first teacher I've encountered in all my years of doing Teaching Through Emotions to champion this stance. Not that I'm against detachment. I actually consider detachment a crucial skill in all relationships. It's just that I'm super pro-caring. As you've heard in TTE conversations I've had with early childhood educators, some of the episodes are Radical Love, Rethinking Care and Professional Love in the Classroom, and another one, Pedagogy Basics, What Educators Can Learn from Early Childhood Teachers. I think this is such a crucial connection that we could all be making. I'll put links to these conversations in the show notes. I wanted to have Rachel talk with me and Joe so we could consider her interesting questions, or these interesting questions from her perspective, but also from Joe's and my different perspectives. And, fun fact, Rachel sent us a voice message on the hotline. That is, she called the hotline, which is really thrilling for me. I always love to hear from listeners and readers. I'll put the hotline number, 413-239-4158, in the show notes in case you want to leave a voice message for me, or you can email me at betsy@teachingthroughemotions.com, also in the show notes. Really, really love to hear from people, old friends, new friends, people I don't know. So let's get on to our conversation about detachment in teaching. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Betsy B. How are you?
I'm good on this rainy, gray day.
Yeah, it is rainy. Rainy and chilly. It's mid-May almost, and we have a fire going in our little wood stove. Yeah.
That's nice, though.
Very cozy.
That's kind of a nice gift. And hello, Rachel.
Hello. Hi, Betsy. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Rachel actually is in England. So what's it like in England these days? Today, in particular.
Today is a rare gift. It's sunny. It is in the 60s. It's been a lovely day so far. I went out for a nice walk. You can't argue with that. You'd really appreciate those sunny days, I think, when they're usually overcast.
Yeah, we're experiencing your weather.
I think so. It's a good swap. I deserve nice things.
You do deserve nice things, right? And we've been having beautiful weather lately. I just wonder if you brought the weather to us and we brought the weather to you. Like, we're just, it is an interesting swap. But fortunately, I don't mind it. Cozy fire, Joe, that's what these days are for. And
it's pretty good.
I happen to be reading War and Peace, so today's a perfect day to sit and, try to get a few hundred pages under my belt. So, Rachel, let's start with a little bit about you. How did you and I meet? Where were you then? Where are you now? What have you been doing in the meantime?
Gosh, so I used to live out your way in Western Mass. When I first left grad school, new teacher, I went to a school out that way. I met you through a mutual friend who we ended up having a TSG with a bit later. And I just kept hearing all about this Wonder Woman, Betsy Burris, and I was like, gotta meet her. And eventually we did, and that was so lovely. So I worked out there for a couple of years, then moved to a different part of the state, moved to some different states, kind of around for a while in different teaching capacities. And we spoke again some years later before I moved over to the UK. And it was that moment where I was really going through kind of like, I think one of the same crises that most teachers go through, where it's like, do I really want to continue to do this? This was at like, I think it was even maybe before the pandemic. So I don't know what that says exactly, since everyone had those crises of faith. And that was the last time we kind of had a conversation. I moved over to the UK and I've been working at a university for about 4 years now. I moved here alongside my partner. He went through later in life career change. So he actually just earned his bachelor's, but through a really great university here. So I came along and started working at a different university where I provide essentially teacher training to active academics. So they're been in the classroom for a while or are kind of new to teaching in the first place. Many of them are pracademics, so people from industry who are coming in to deliver content for the first time. So I look at it from a purely pedagogic lens in terms of how they're writing their curriculum, how they are positioning their active learning activities, what are different ways assessments could look like. A lot that I've taken from working in secondary education spaces in the States over there that I feel like has been kind of novel to a lot of people. It's been really interesting kind of taking what I've done in the past and bringing it to this new space and continuing to look at different teaching practices that I then can embody when I'm teaching adults, which is a totally different kind of space. But you'd be surprised at how many times adults can be an awful lot like middle schoolers.
I'm not sure I would be that surprised, but our listeners might be. Maybe they wouldn't be either.
But yes, that's mostly what I'm doing now. But I was teaching art before, so visual arts has been my background. And bringing that kind of creative side to what could be, it's very formulaic. I mean, you know how it is with the UK. There's a lot of regulations, a lot of bodies you have to answer to. So trying to put a more creative spin on the way we approach teaching in these kinds of formal spaces, that's also been a big part of my learning journey. So I'm still teaching, but it's in a different format than it was before, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different challenges, but the same, maybe.
Yes. Same but different, as always, as ever.
It's a more regulated environment there than here?
I would say it is. I feel as though when you're teaching higher ed in the States, I feel like a lot of lectures, I'm going to call them lectures. I'm UK pilled, so I'm going to be using a lot of those terminologies. I think a lot of those, it seems like you can make changes to how you're delivering curriculum in a much more swift way. Whereas here, people will go through course reapprovals, program reapprovals, through certain amounts of time. If you make one change to an assessment, you have to go through an entire process to look at your entire program to make sure that everything is lining up in the same way. And that sometimes works, sometimes does deliver, I think, more effective outcomes. Sometimes it doesn't. It's all about the people who are involved in the process, and what it looks like on paper is totally different than how it might look when it's actually happening in the classroom. But a lot of those conversations I have with academics are really rooted in those one-to-one conversations. And so I think conversation and communication and that psychological safety of not being the smartest person in the room all the time and acknowledging that and being willing to learn, that's come up quite a lot, especially recently as I'm learning more. And of course, the more you learn, the more you realize, actually, I don't know that much, as much as I thought I did.
Ain't it the truth?
Yeah.
Sounds like academics in England or in the UK are similar to our academics in this respect, that having a safe space to not know and to learn is really crucial, because so much pressure, I think, is on their shoulders to be the smartest person in the room. That can be hard. But we do not have those regulations. You're right. In my experience, doing the same thing that you do here in the States, professors can design anything they want and no one knows the better or the worse. So much freer here.
Yeah. Again, for better or for worse.
Exactly. Yeah, we know. Sometimes it's really good to have standards that someone assures you meet. But you're also right that you can have on paper a beautiful assessment, but how you implement that can be really unpredictably, disappointingly ineffectual.
Yeah.
And that's true for anybody. Okay, so what prompted you to contact me this time? Let's dive into that.
This time. Well, I reconnected with you by calling the hotline, which is very exciting. Honestly, very millennial of me, but calling people freaks me out a lot sometimes. So I was feeling
funny.
But I was good to know that there was a voicemail on the other side that really took the pressure off. But then it cut out a little bit, but I came back. Anyway, so.
Right, it was weird.
It was a little weird, but I liked it.
You persevered. You persevered.
Thank you. Yes, I did my best. All right, so I called you. I left a message. What I'd done was listening to a couple of episodes that you had, especially there was one on care with the early childhood educator that came on to speak with you. And I just found that really touching and nice, and honestly just kind of good to come back to, again, some of the language about feelings in teaching that I kind of felt like was not missing, but it's definitely not talked about nearly as much in higher ed overall, and certainly not higher ed in the UK. And I think that some of that comes back to, people are under a lot of pressure when you're in these kinds of environments. They maybe don't want to seem as emotionally vulnerable in those ways. But I think that when I teach and when I'm trying to embody more effective teaching practices, I use a lot of feelings-based language, which I think is kind of new for a lot of those folks anyway.
Oh, wow.
And so while I was listening to it, I was also thinking about, I have a younger cousin who's maybe 3 years into her teaching practice, and she works with a really challenging classroom of special needs kiddos. And she, has been physically abused in the classroom. She deals with the parents in some challenging ways. And speaking with her recently, it just made me, I don't know, really think back to my most challenging days when I was teaching early on, but even during the pandemic and, quote unquote, post-pandemic. And I was just really touched by that opportunity to hear a good discussion about the important parts of what it means to be in a feeling-based environment and how much teaching is about relationships. So it made me reflect on my own situation presently, previously, and how it relates to other people. I left you a message about it, and the more I thought about it, and then on the follow-up conversation that you and I had, the more I was starting to think about how I think on the surface maybe don't come across as a very feelings-based person. And truly, feelings are, not okay for me a lot of the time. I've done a lot of personal work on those myself.
Whoa.
No thanks.
I love it.
Like big feelings are like, in the last couple of years have been feeling more okay with like getting in touch with some of those feelings. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we wound up in this way, and care being so much of a big feeling. A lot of vulnerability, a lot of like emotional weirdness there. Yeah.
As I recall, we were talking about, I think we were making a distinction between what you called squishy teaching.
Yes,
right?
That's
Was
right.
it squishy? Squishy teaching, which is more openly caring, more flowingly caring and emotional. And I think detach is a term that you used, which
Yes.
I just love that dichotomy. Of course, there's a continuum between those endpoints, which we'll probably be feeling out today. But of course, detachment is absolutely crucial. But I hadn't really thought about caring as being kind of a version of boundary breach, flowing into someone else's need, like suspending your sense of self and giving to someone else unbidden, really, just because you perceive that there's some sort of a need. As I say, I'm all over that. I think that makes the world go round, but I'm also really all over like getting your garden wall working for you so that you've got your boundaries in place and they're strong and you know how to look over your garden wall, talk over your garden wall, but keep yourself out of the goddamn garden of other people. So this is what I love about this. I think detachment is crucial in teaching. I think care is crucial in teaching, but I really just want to talk about the clash between those two, or another way of putting it is the continuum between those two and how we slide along that continuum. So is there a story you can share with us that we can kind of dig into?
Absolutely. It's funny, when I was thinking about this too, I have very similar memories, both in middle school classrooms, from when I first started teaching and when I left teaching. So it's kind of like bookended in this weird way. But it's that situation where, you're in an arts classroom and the perception of the arts anyway. This is the time to relax. We're kicking back. It's not serious. Whatever else. Starting off as a new teacher, obviously my classroom management skills are a little bit iffy or at best, even near the end. Again, this is like kind of post-pandemic, so there's a lot we could say about that. But even when I feel like I have a better grip on classroom management, things just seem to devolve so easily when it comes to middle school students. And I would find myself in these spaces where I want my classroom to be a place of focus and reflection and getting into things and curiosity, and we're trying stuff and we're connecting with the squishy parts inside. But when it devolves into something where there's little bits of chaos or group chaos, this kind of like tribalism thing starts to happen where it becomes myself against them in that way. They're doing their own thing. They're expressing joy, perhaps, in a way that I don't understand. And I found that I would just kind of like turning off, but I felt so outside of wanting to be with them and to experience something like that, to experience their joy and rein it in a little bit. I couldn't really participate in it. I was a detached observer from it, and I wasn't going to yell and kick and scream to try to corral them back in, but I also took a while to figure out a good strategy to deal with it. And I think it kind of ended up being where I would just be quiet. I would just not be a part of any of that, not even try to reassert myself. I was just another participant in their world. Is their world, I'm just living in it, you know? And I feel like that does a disservice sometimes to not only the way that I'm seen in the classroom, but the way they see that classroom space as something that is safe, where there is regulation. I was also struggling a little bit with that. Like, was I doing my best if I just kind of doing my own neurodivergent sort of thing where it's like, I can't deal, so I don't know what to do.
And so I'll do nothing.
And so I'll do nothing. I can't be with you in this. And I know that that's logically what I think some students would need, but you know, maybe they don't always need that. And I certainly was a child that didn't need that when I was in school. Like if I was having a time, the last thing I wanted was to be perceived by somebody. You know?
Well put.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the exact opposite. What we expect students want is to be seen, but you just said, nah, I don't want to be seen. No.
Yeah.
So questions, Joe? I mean, do we need more specifics? I know I'm picturing what you're talking about. And I mean, I do want to kind of clarify. Are you talking about students who are joyful and boisterous and kind of coloring outside the lines, as it were, in positive ways? Or did you have experiences with them coloring outside the lines in negative ways that were actually unnerving to you?
Yeah, definitely the latter. I feel like certainly there's some moments where it's like, it's clear to see that there's some joy happening, but it's like as soon as the joyfulness is either about not something art related or it's something that perhaps is more vindictive about those interpersonal relationships that they're all doing.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get in that. And
Yeah.
it just became something where, then I start spiraling. Am I not a good teacher because I don't want to be with them in the shit all of the time?
Yeah.
Am I helping by trying to insert myself in a situation that maybe is nothing?
Yeah. That is the eternal conflict between, I tend probably to, if anything, drift a little farther in the direction of, all right, I'm going to preserve the learning environment and the focus environment for everyone to the extent that I can by tamping down or short-circuiting these over-exuberant, unfocused interactions, which while they are energetic and joyful and they've got, you know, people feeling relaxed, you can feel too relaxed in the classroom. You can be letting things go too far. Where exactly is that line? I don't know. I'm trying to find it. And when I see somebody who's like, well, this seems mean, I'm going to shut this down. This seems like, look at me, look at me, look at me, and I'm distracting from everyone else. That I'm going to shut down. And then once you maybe get a handle on it and you have shut a lot of things down, sometimes you later realize, oh my God, I totally killed the vibe. Now everybody is just marching in here like into a little prison and they're, you know, looking at me wide-eyed and frightened. That balance is what? I'm almost 60 and I am still looking for it. And it's May and the year is almost over. And I was wondering about it just yesterday. I had 2 sections of the same grade level, the same material. And in one of them, I got really impatient and like, you guys, we've done this 1,000 times. Suddenly you forget it all. And suddenly you're like, you know, totally zoned out. And then the next group comes in and it was just pure joy. So I walk away from it just going, I don't know where that line is. It's that tension. We've talked about this at a lot of different times where like you are comparing what you're doing right now to what you think maybe should be done in the classroom and wondering, okay, in what ways am I coming up short?
Yeah.
But it's the struggle. The struggle is that will never stop.
I mean, I'm wondering about, I guess, a couple things. One thing is to say, I wish that teachers would know how to think about their natural instinctual responses to what's going on in a classroom in front of them in a way that is really genuinely curious. Like that line that you just described so well, Joe, I believe that teachers respond to their moments appropriately. But appropriate is actually very subjective, right? It's what's going on with the students is one thing that you don't necessarily know. You can never know as a teacher, even if you ask. They don't necessarily know, and they won't necessarily be honest with you, even if they do. So you're never really going to know what's going on, what you're observing and feeling. You're going to act on your own instincts. Those instincts are going to be affected by your moment, right? Like what you brought into the classroom and what you're able to talk. Like what made you impatient with the first class that didn't make you impatient with the second class? That is partly a you question. It's partly a them question. And I don't think they're trained to, and I don't think they have the time to, or they probably don't have the interest in thinking about it. Like, what was going on with me and what was going on with them? And how did we actually dovetail? How did we fit together to get me to either fall off, Rachel, back off, or become impatient and start clamping down? To me, that's one issue. And the other is, where does care fit in here?
I think that having that caring perspective is a part of both of those things, about knowing when to intervene and when to step back. But all of those decisions are so quick, and they're all just like these micro decisions that you do so fast, but then an ability to come back and reflect on it and to think about, okay, what happened here, here, here? Well, how do you have time to do that if the next class is coming in? You're cleaning up from the previous class. The next class is already there, banging down the door. I mean, there's just no space in your day to have that kind of reflection. And that is so crucial, I think, to not only being effective, what that means in your practice, but also about ensuring that you can replicate some of those good things. Because if you don't know what they are, I mean, you kind of have the vibe, but you don't really have like the script to go from. And we love to have something that feels certain and correct, but it's so different every day because of just the pheromones, the moon. I mean, how much of this is like, so of course, like, I mean, that's why I feel okay with stepping back a little sometimes.
Right. Even something like group 1 came in at 10 a.m. and group 2 came in at 11 a.m. Those are entirely different universes. And you never know. There's just so many variables involved. I wonder if that's what is so exhausting. And Rachel, I think you were maybe was it an exhaustion that you felt and a helplessness around like trying to make this work?
Yeah, I think that definitely is a part. I mean, some of it, I think, comes back to all the negative emotions are really just two things. It's like fear or it's sadness. And I feel like that's definitely both of those things happening. So when you feel helpless and out of control, I need to have control. It's very much the Capricorn in me. Got to control it. But if I don't have those things, the reaction is then to like, just to kind of stop. And that's the protective barrier. And then the sadness comes from me feeling like I'm not doing what I ought to for the students or what I should be doing as a teacher in general. So a lot of my other kind of like reflection of identity, I never found myself being like, I am a teacher. I really struggled with that for a long time as a part of my identity because I wasn't super squishy and emotional in a lot of ways. Like I had colleagues and friends who were just like, I want to leave my job, but I can't because I love my kids so much. And like, I just need to be with them. They are going to miss me so. And I'm just like, I don't get that. Like, just what are you talking about? Like, they're cool and everything. But like, do you think, I don't know, this sounds rude. Do you think they're going to miss you? They're going to miss you a little bit. Then they have like a bazillion other things that are going on. And it's like, you can't be responsible for, you're not the sole reason for them having a good day, but every day, maybe one day, that's great.
That's a super healthy attitude, by the way.
Hey, when you step back from it a little bit,
And yet you can step back too far.
Right, exactly. You guys, I hope you agree. Or maybe our listeners, you want to fight, leave a comment. I think staying in a job that's making you miserable because you love the kids so much and they're going to miss you so much and they need you so desperately. And what are they going to do without you? That's what I call grandiosity. And your attitude, Rachel, is, no, they're actually fine. They're going to be fine.
Sure.
They actually aren't thinking about you much of the time. And then you, Joe, are, I think, absolutely correct. There is a middle ground, obviously.
Sure.
There's both, I'm going to miss the kids and I love the kids. And, they're going to miss me for a minute, but they'll continue, like both.
Yeah.
Both and.
Yeah, I'm a Spanish teacher, Rachel, and I have in recent years started doing a program where I take seniors who are studying high-level Spanish to a particular school in Argentina for our April break week. And every other year, they come and stay with us. And it's so incredibly valuable. It's fantastic. And I live this tension every time I take that trip because I've been teaching these kids for years in a classroom environment where I try to keep a lid on things. And it's, hey, when we're focused, we're focused. We are working on class stuff here. And we have fun, we laugh, but I don't know them. I'll go to see them in the plays. I will go sometimes watch them in their athletic events, but I don't know them. And they don't really know me. But then we travel together. We spend 24 hours traveling together, and they get into host families. And they sometimes have some tensions with their host families, and they come and they talk to me about it. And I just did this week, and a kid had a wonderful kid. He had a little bit of tension with one aspect of his host stay. And he was, but you know what? I'm going to tough it out, and it's going to be great because they're wonderful people. And I thanked him for that and for that attitude. And in this really strange moment, I reached out and I grabbed him on the shoulder and sort of squeezed his shoulder and shook it because that was what needed to happen right then. And then you realize I've known this kid for years. It's the first time I've ever touched him. And it's probably the last time I ever will, So I have this classroom environment where I need to keep a lid on those things and I need to be detached and I need to bring out some joy, but I also need to be the ref. And keep everything focused, right? But now the point of that was to get them into this wonderful human interacting situation, and I'm still there. And now it calls for a totally different thing. And I'm like, is that okay? Should I at some point have patted him on the shoulder up until now? Wasn't there ever a situation where that kind of human emotional interaction was required? So I don't know. Maybe I should have been a little more open with them until now. I don't think I went too far in being as emotionally open as we were, but it's a totally different situation. And they're both part of this crazy puzzle we're trying to pull apart, to what extent am I their uncle and to what extent am I their boss?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that the knowing, when you're a little kid and you see your teacher in the grocery store and it's like, oh my God, no way. That's a real, whoa.
Wearing tennis shoes.
Yeah, what are you talking? Crazy.
I think that still happens with older students, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Because
that
teachers are such objects. Students make their teachers objects that they can either admire, revere, or absolutely hate and revile, right? So to see them as human beings can be really, really striking.
Maybe that's also part of it. Part of that detachment is that you are maintaining kind of that fixture of yourself in a school environment. And then when that starts to degrade a little bit, being outside of it, it just is it's just overwhelming. For me, it feels overwhelming.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think it's really interesting to think about the position of a teacher. I mean, ideally, you think you're a person, you think you're a subject, you think you are acting in a legitimate and helpful ways, and you expect the people that you're helping, that you're caring for in these regimented kind of acceptable ways, that they will receive it and reciprocate appropriately, that they will listen, they will be respectful, which means that a teacher is kind of a blend of a subject and an object. I'm a subject because I'm acting on you students, and I'm an object because you're reading me in a way that you can't possibly know me, right? You're not supposed to know me. You're just supposed to work with me. And that works. The ideal is that works really well, that the object that they turn us into is an object that they feel like dealing with, or the subject that they think we are, the person that they project on us is going to work for them. When they either don't care about us, they don't care what object we are, they don't respect us as subjects or objects, and are actually doing and acting on each other regardless of what adult is in the room with them, which is, I think, what so many teachers are experiencing now, that students are just taking charge of the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And the teachers, while they're there, have absolutely no power over, or feel that they have no power. That's where the teachers are just kind of extruded from the system. Not purposely. I think, pulled yourself out of the system. That's interesting. We can talk more about that. Or the teachers are the objects of the student's wrath. Or the student, yeah, fuck you is what happens. Or, make me. The ways that the students pull the teachers into their enactments, they're acting out. And then the teacher becomes complicit. Like, what do you get? Now you've got to do something. You're either being turned into an object or ignored in a way that you don't consent to, or you're being used as an object in a way that you don't consent to. And if those are the options that teachers are boinging between, and I think a lot of teachers are, what do you do? And caring is not relevant there, right? How do you care for those kids?
We have to find something, definitely, that in the moment, it is hard to find something that is lovable about someone causing you pain, because you're still receiving pain in that way.
Yes.
Even if it's not towards you as an individual, it's about you as the adult and you as, like you said, that object. And that's a hard thing to break.
Yeah.
And of course, no wonder that some teachers will then turn it around in an aggressive way that isn't helpful for anyone, because we're really coming back to those, I don't want to say lizard brain, because that's not really it, but it's the emotional side. I mean, it's you're scared and you're afraid, and this is how I'm going to respond to it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it is a lizard brain. I think it kicks in. I think teachers become lizards. Let's just say it out loud.
Lizard people are real.
Fight or flight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Fight or flight. And flight
Exactly.
doesn't get me fired. So
No, yeah.
Right. Right.
a lot
exactly.
of people, the difficult interactions, you just let them go because, it might escalate. And if it escalates, then things get really ugly. So, okay, this kid gets to win in this little interaction and maybe poison the atmosphere around him for everybody else because I don't have the tools to engage like that.
Yeah. Of course, TTE is about teaching, because I love teaching and see it as a crucial element in our nation's children's healthy development. But here's a little secret that all of you know. The stuff Joe and I talk about applies everywhere to everyone in any relationship. So, if you heard something today that applies to your non-education world, law, business, child rearing, nonprofit leading, frickin' friend or family surviving, let me know. Leave a message either on my Substack or on the TTE hotline, 413-239-4158. Or in a review. Share how useful this podcast is in your own life. Or in a comment. Tell me how what we talked about today relates, how you apply it, how you want to apply it, how you did apply it, and what happened when you did. We'll share your message on the air.
Are you finding a similar dynamic as you teach adults?
Obviously, I'm not not obviously, I shouldn't say that, but I'm not getting chairs thrown at me anymore.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
But
Wow.
again, I think some of that, the emotional response of maybe being told something that you don't feel like you should do or are warranted to do, that can come across in some kind of aggressive ways. But I think most adults are better at having that regulation to at least say something maybe more cutting and to, I don't know. There's something about the lack of emotion sometimes, or when the emotion is bubbling up and you don't expect it, it can feel a little bit more intimidating at times. But I think that because in my context, I'm working with folks who, for the most part, are my colleagues. They work within the university setting. So I see them in their day job and I see them as students. That's also an interesting kind of conversation. But most of them will understand through those individual relationships with me, because they're willing to know me as that person.
Yes.
That what I'm doing in a teacher capacity is something that is for mutual benefit. It's to help them. They see it that way. They understand its function. Versus with a younger student, I think that they're really struggling on unpacking the validity of why you might be asked to do a certain thing, or looking at the bigger picture of the room. So, if you need to, why don't you focus on applying paint in this way instead of on your face or your hands and smashing it on the paper? Like, oh, but I'm still making art. Like, they're seeing it as a challenge in that way, but they understand the logic if you're, talking them through it, I guess. Yeah, I think it was just, for me, it was the fact that the metacognition and the development of knowing your just sense of self in a space. I really had a hard time dealing with 30 of those little micro cases at once while trying to also encourage them to do that inward reflection or even just, practice holding a pencil in a certain way versus something where it's like it's a smaller bite size because you don't see your students, your colleagues as often in higher ed. It just makes it a little bit more manageable. It makes me think a lot about like how schools are operating in East Asian countries. So the students have more time to just kind of get on with things themselves rather than the amount of time you have in front of a teacher. It's much less. So the teachers have more time to prepare things in a certain way. I think there's obviously some things about, how culturally a teacher is respected in some of those spaces, but that you aren't the same person in front of them all the time, telling them to do certain things all the time. You're there to present information and to kind of do things in this more regimented way. I am just kind of like guessing about how this might work, but I am curious about how that plays into the detachment because you are not so emotionally exhausted being in front of the potentially dysregulated and chaotic kind of environments all the time for, 6 to 10 hours a day, depending on the situation that you're in.
Yeah.
You're making me think this last about Asian students and cultures. And I think in Asian cultures, parents do a lot of the education work. That is, they set the standards. They are very clear. They value education in, I think, just historically reinforced way. Their kids are more disciplined. There's an expectation that they're going to do well in class or they're going to take it seriously, which I would imagine reduces the load on teachers to have to do that work. Now, I'm thinking about, American students and families where the parents aren't necessarily doing that job at home, where the kids are expected to be kids and parents are helicopter parents. They're enabling their kids to, play all the sports they want and do all the skating they want and have all the fun they want. And it feels like parenting in our culture is much more about enabling what we might call happiness or freedom than it is about enforcing kind of long-term future expectations of success or educational accomplishment. And so that puts a huge onus on teachers to do the disciplining, to convince students of the value of what they're doing in school, because in many homes anyway, I mean, not in my home necessarily, but we're the ones who talk about feminism at dinner. Lots of families are not doing that work. In fact, they're teaching their kids to expect something different. And then they come into classrooms and teachers are asking them to do what teachers have always asked students to do. But it's such a clash. It's such a cultural clash between the family culture and the school culture. I never really thought of that before or thought of it that way before.
Yeah. And within the American culture, you've got lots of variety. There are the school where I teach is just an extremely well-educated, prosperous, small town, very little diversity, very, of the kids that I just took to Argentina, for example, one had never left the country and never had a passport. Everybody else already had passports, done multiple international trips, So I've said it a lot. The place I get to teach, it's shooting fish in a barrel. I have, nope, never had a chair thrown at me. Not one time. Never been assaulted. Not one time. I know they happen in my school, but I have never seen a fight break out. And that is one place to teach. I've still got emotional landscapes that I have to navigate, and I've still got that magic line I have to find between being an approachable, empathetic soul that they can identify with and being somebody that isn't my role. I'm the person who makes everything seem like it's maintained. I am the fence fixer. I keep the fences up and everybody knows where the fences are. And, that's comforting. I know where the fence is. So you're finding that role. But yeah, I've tried many times to say something that's true about like America, and it's very difficult because you cross a hill and like, yep, that's a totally different world over here.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I know the town you're talking about, Joe, and just north of us, it's not like what you just described.
No,
Just east of us,
exactly.
it's not what you described. West of us, south of us, it's not. I mean, there is an island, and this is a college town too. But the schools that I'm working with, there's a lot of this other stuff, and this is what we're getting in the news too. You know, students' mental health is. And I appreciate you, Joe, in saying it is different. We can't make generalizations, and I'm sorry to have made the generalization, but I still stand by it. Like, you know, just generally speaking, it feels like we have. I think Americans have different attitudes towards childhood. I don't know than maybe a lot of Asian cultures do. Or maybe we're starting to blend more. I don't know. But I feel as though what you're describing, Rachel, kind of is explained by this notion that there is more respect for education, maybe, and an expectation.
I think that, and I'm kind of pontificating just because of my partner who went back to school. He got his degree in war studies, which sounds aggressive because it is, but
Wow.
it's a lens of international relations that goes along with it. But because he's doing this program with a bunch of students from the UK, but also internationally, he's learning about the US in the UK through this context. Really, really interesting having conversations about that and how the US is perceived elsewhere, especially in an academic context. And one of the things that seems to have come out that I really took away from our conversations, he and I, is that the individualism of the U.S. is the defining feature of everything. So in the school context, if students and their families are saying like, well, you get to do your own thing, you're forging your own path, you can make a decision about your own self. And sometimes that agrees with what the schools are doing, sometimes it doesn't. But the individuality of like you making your own way and forget about everybody else, I think that's a very different piece to what happens in a lot of cultures in like more socialized areas. So I think people look at Finland a lot as like their school systems are so great, you know, whatever, like we should be like Finland. And then obviously, you know, like in Japan and Korea and Singapore and those kinds of places, well, that's also a lot more like this is about collectively doing well so that we can, as a culture, as a society, collectively kind of fight for those same goals. I think that's an interesting piece to it, really. But at the end of the day, it's really about like, what is the system doing in terms of hours that you have with students, FaceTime hours? And if the teacher is in front of a student for most of their day, they have no time to plan, they have no time to regulate themselves, it really becomes challenging to do the reflective work to then be an effective educator. And I just wonder, like, if having less time to be in front of them, more time to reflect and protected time to reflect, I think could do a lot of good for people. But I don't know. I guess it gets away a little bit from like the detachment part. But I feel like also in those kinds of places where you're in front of the students for less amount of time, you already are kind of that detached figure. Because you don't get to see them as much. So maybe that's beneficial on both sides. Of course it is. But I don't know.
I mean, 5 classes a day with 30 kids in each out of 7 periods a day. You're going to be very detached or you are not going to survive it. There's, there are teachers who are in such disadvantaged situations that's really, it's a survival mechanism. I can't go through my day taking every one of these various aggressions and every one of these distractions totally to heart. And I can't call every kid sweetie and honey, and I can't honestly, truly love and care for all these. I just can't. There's no way it can, or I could do that for a month, but then I'd quit.
And then burn out. Exactly. I think this is really related to burnout, actually. I think teachers who can't not care for their kiddos, as you say, who can't not care, who go home and cry, who feel so deeply. I mean, this is who bring their empathy to the classroom, and empathy being a great strength, but also a huge curse if you don't have the capacity to detach from the emotions that you're taking on from other people. So I do think, Joe, I totally agree, to not be detached, to not know where you end, your responsibility ends, your power ends, your capacity to feel ends, and where they begin. Anyone who knows me knows that I really have a problem. Empathy is a problem for me because empathy and grandiosity, this notion that I can feel for and fix everybody, really problematic because it assumes things about the people that you are feeling for and caring for. If they're correct, we don't want them to be. That is, if you are so incompetent that you can't take care of yourself and you need me to take care of you in ways that are developmentally inappropriate that you should be doing, then there's a problem here. I need to actually support you in taking care of yourself, not do the caring, not do the feeling, not do the flowing and the bonding and fixing for you. So this is where I think care and detachment have to kind of collaborate. This is where it becomes a tricky line where, yeah, I care, but I can't do it for you. And yeah, I care. And that means I'm going to have to metabolize the emotions that I'm feeling about you, about your situation, for you, about your difficulties, or about my frustration with you. I've got to metabolize those. That means I've got to make use of what I can and poop out the rest. I can't hold it all. I can't hold it for you. I can't do it for you. I have to know the limits of my power.
Yeah.
And I really mean power, caring being a power.
I care about you, Johnny, and I care about the other 29 kids too. And I cannot have you ruining this for the other 29.
Exactly.
So
That's
as
correct.
much as empathy as I have for you, my empathy for everybody else means that right now I've got to kind of shut down my empathy for you a little bit because you need to be regulated. It's such an endless dance.
Yes. And it is a version of care, what you just described, Joe.
Yeah.
I think it's not just a version of care for everyone but Johnny. It's a version of care, and you know this because you've actually said you're the fence mender. I would call that you're the holder. You hold that environment. You make that environment safe. And if Johnny is making it unsafe for everybody else in the room, then it is your job and it's Johnny's job to work together to get him safe so that everyone else can be safe as well. And so it is an act of care to say, to work with Johnny, to do what you need to do with Johnny to get him safe again. Because acting out, in my view, is a sign that I'm not feeling safe. If I were feeling safe, I wouldn't have to act out. But if I act out, it's because I'm either testing you to see if you can keep me safe, or I'm acting out feelings I cannot manage myself, so I need help with that. And caring, I think, is the impulse. It's a force at work in us, but I think it doesn't look the same in every single situation.
Right.
This still comes back to like the interpretation of like what it means to be a teacher and why I think I struggled with the identity part of it so much. But I just wanted to also comment on the fact that, a lot of what care does look like does maybe feel a bit more cold, a bit more like regulatory as like the boss of the room or the more official, the power dynamic, the more official person in the room. Because it is still about learning. And I think that in a lot of conversations that I have in this kind of way of teaching other teachers is forgetting the fact that like this is about the content and it is about moving people together in a way that is coded within this educational space. And it's care to get you to that next place. So it's also about shepherding people forward in a way that makes sense to them. And sometimes I'll step away from it because I know that you can only hear things so many times from me in this moment. Let me take a lap and I'll come back and we'll check it again later. Or I'll talk to someone else. I'll collaborate with a colleague. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we can approach it. But it doesn't have to all be me. And it doesn't have to all be like, why are you feeling this way? Let's rap about emotions right now. Like, and it's not the space for it. I'm not trained for that, all of those things.
Right. Yeah.
Well, this has been so, I think, really, for me, important and thought-provoking because I do think we have spotlighted an aspect of teaching that I don't think is teachable. I've worked in many teacher education programs. We never taught this, how to find and navigate this fine line that you're describing, Joe. We talk about classroom management systems. We talk about red cards and green cards. We talk about, putting names on boards. It's missing the point.
Well, it's all like this one weird trick will change everything. And like, brother, it is not that.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes these systems do work. I mean, the point, whatever gets an entire group of children or adults to agree with you, to work with you, whatever it takes, go for it. But I think what's much more effective and fundamental is a commitment to understanding what you guys have been describing, that there are relationships. Whether you know your students or not, you do know them in ways, they know you in ways. They're constantly constantly looking at you and watching you. And they know you so well, not just in terms of your tics or what you're going to say next, but they sense us. And same with teachers with students. So there is all this unspoken stuff that's being transmitted between us that help us to know each other. And that level of collaborating, of what I call fitting together, of working together, is always present in classrooms, whether we are caring or detached or something else. We're always picking up on each other in these ways. And it is foundational, I think, to me, foundational to the functioning of a classroom. When teachers don't know how to think about that or talk about that or have the time, as you're saying, Rachel, to actually just like decompress enough to reflect on anything at all, if they don't have the time to think about their living with students in these ways in classrooms, then they're going to either continue missing the boat or just start to entrench and ossify into a type of teacher that does it this way or that way and is always somehow vulnerable and at risk when it doesn't work that way, right? So being open to figuring it out together is crucial to teaching. But how do we support teachers in being that way and constantly evolving?
I was just going to say, that's like they haven't had the time to do it, but they also haven't had the tools because nobody talks about this. But that's nobody until Betsy Burris talked about this. I'm reminded of, there's a piece in the New York Times today about trying to get your dog to live longer. Like there's all these people investing millions and millions and millions in trying desperately, and they paint all these pictures of, well, when so-and-so's corgi died, it was just so devastating, and now she has devoted herself to putting off that moment. Like, I'm going to sink millions, and I'm looking for investors to not have to deal with the eventual death of a dog. It's like, dude, that day is gonna come. The problem is not that the dog wasn't around long enough. The problem is, like, did you not know that the dog was eventually going to die when you got the dog? This is something you have to deal with. And I would love my dog to live longer too. Okay, now he's going to be 16. And then I'll have to do it.
Yeah,
you know, like, there is no avoiding this.
And I will have known the dog longer, so it's going to be harder.
It's even harder. There's no avoiding this. There's no avoiding the emotional muckiness. There's the other dichotomy between squishiness and, hard exterior. There's no avoiding that. Where is the magic line? I don't know. We'll never find it. But we have to find a way to accept that this is the search and that we're going to fail at it a lot of the time. But sometimes we're going to get it right.
And we live through it every day. We live through it every moment. We're living that line every moment. We're living that quest and that uncertainty every moment. And I think that's a beautiful thing if we know how to embrace it.
Yes.
If embracing it is sanctioned and is supported and is valued and celebrated, like that to me is teaching, is managing that line constantly, feeling what I'm feeling, paying attention to my instincts, looking out there and seeing what's going on out there. I mean, I'm getting chills just talking about it. Why be a teacher if you don't want to be feeling the organisms in your room with you as they're individually transmitting and glomming together into a collective? That to me has got to be part of the thrill, or else don't do it. Or go to the higher ed. Like as you did, Rachel, I think is probably a great place for you. Higher ed is great, but it's much less complex, I think, because you're doing so much individual relating and because there's this peer element that makes you able to be a friend and able to be a teacher, because that's what you're doing in friendship anyway. When you're an adult, you're sharing and teaching, mutually changing each other. So, but boy, when you got a group of kiddos who are not your peers, who are using you ruthlessly, who are going through shit that they can't understand, and you have no idea how to convey to them what is happening and how you want to help and how you want to care. I mean, that's just crazy. That's craziness. That's what you do every day, Joe. But you've got older kids too.
Right. Well, I mean, and then when you're teaching the younger ones, you get a chair thrown at you, and now in higher ed, you get a little bit of sarcasm lobbed across the room.
Right.
But it's still
There's always something.
Still a
there
line
always
somewhere.
is a weapon.
You're always dodging
There's always
something,
a weapon.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. People use these weapons because they're irresponsible with their emotions and they don't know how to deal with them. But is that part of the job of an educator? Is that part of our job these days? If our students come into classrooms and teach us that they don't know how to self-regulate, they don't know how to manage their emotions, they're unable to settle down and learn because they're so anxious. Is that a teacher's job to help them figure out how to do that? I would say yes, because that's what we got. That's what we got in classrooms. I think kicking students out because they're not conforming to some archaic expectation or wishful thinking of what students are, I think we have to deal with what we got. And that means I think teachers need to be equipped. They don't become therapists, but they do need to be supported in doing what you're talking about, Rachel. And you too, Joe, figuring this out, being able to think about it in ways that are fruitful and actually productive. We all agree.
We agree.
Yes, get the
Of course
into a
we agree.
TSG. Yeah. This has been great. I do want to end giving you, Rachel, a chance to talk about a book that has just come out that is yours. And it's a collaboration with a very famous educator, actually. So can you tell us about the book?
I would love to. Yes, so I worked with Gloria Ladson-Billings on a new version of her book, The Dream Keepers. And it's a book that's been around for, 40 years, I think, at this point. So it's an established text, but it's specifically about case studies about 8 teachers who have embodied and demonstrate successful teaching approaches for African American children. And there's a lot of really enduring ideas that stick around from, how things were in the 90s to now. I learned a lot in doing this book with her. It was a book that I had been familiar with and I'd known her work before, but to actually get to speak with her and do this adaptation was really incredible. So it's a graphic novel adaptation that uses those different case studies of different teachers through a narrative that follows a young student teacher as she's figuring out her own place in the classroom. And it was a lot of hard work and a lot of fun to put it together. I'm really proud of it. So it's called The Dream Keepers Comic Edition. Came out in April, and you can find it at your local booksellers or TC Press. That's teacherscollegepress.com. And I hope everyone enjoys it and gets a good read out of it. It was a lot of fun to make.
Sounds fascinating.
I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes. So anybody who's interested, just scroll down on the Substack. You'll get to it. It does sound fantastic. And I have to say, Gloria Ladson-Billings was a name I knew when I was in my doctoral program. In fact, I found out that she graduated from my same alma mater with her PhD 6 years before I started in that same program. She was in a different program. I was in language literacy and culture. She was in curriculum instruction or curriculum and teaching. But I just missed her.
She's legendary. She really is like a powerful force. And she's like, she's just so bright and brilliant and has really done so much work for like really coining what culturally relevant pedagogy means. And it's like, reading this stuff is like, well, this is so part and parcel to just what we know good teaching is, but it's only because of work that she's done and encouraging those kinds of voices to be heard about how to best connect with kiddos in a way that is where they're at. And ultimately, this is about, you can't do a one-size-fits-all all the time, but you can kind of know a better way to adjust your own practices in order to support students who maybe are, they're in a system that's not designed for them. I mean, let's be honest. And so
it's designed against them.
Yeah.
No, it's what we're talking about. It's another example of what we're talking about here, that to be a teacher is to feel it out and to be aware of home culture versus school culture and the bridges that need to be built between those. And, one Black family does not have the same family culture as another Black family, just as one white family does not have the same. So it's just becoming more and more complex, I think, to ask teachers to suss that out, to get to know their students enough to understand what the challenges are. But it's the same work that we're talking about in terms of squishiness versus detachment, or the combination of the two. It's really getting to know your students, getting to know them and figuring out ways to connect with them and perceive their needs and figure out what your role is in helping them manage those needs, right? Not doing it for them. That's super squishy, but also not withdrawing so far that you leave them all alone, which would be super detached. So this beautiful line that you've got in your mind's eye, Joe, that's what we're working on all the time with every student.
All the time.
And every day, like every moment of every day. It's so fucking hard. Why do we think teaching is so fucking hard?
It's so hard. It is so hard. It's so, every time I talk to a teacher, no matter what level they're teaching, I give them so much gratitude and so much appreciation. And I'm sick of being like on the receiving end of certain people saying like, oh, thanks for everything that you do. Like, okay,
thanks for your service.
But I think that when you have a positive relationship and when you're really being transparent and honest in those small moments of vulnerability. Small, maybe not all the time vulnerable, but
Right.
thank you. I appreciate you. This is hard work.
Yeah.
You're doing
Yeah.
great. You're doing
Yeah.
awesome.
Yep. Exactly.
And you can't do it right if you're too squishy, and you can't do it right if you're not squishy enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I just want to say to end, we are at the end of Teacher Appreciation Week here in the States, which is a kind of crazy idea. Like
So funny.
1 week.
That's it.
You know,
That's all
I just wrote a blog post about this. It's like 1 day for mothers, 1 week for teachers. Okay. But I want to just piggyback on what you said, Rachel. Every day is a good day to thank your teacher, your kid's teacher, for something amazing that they did, thoughtful that they did, something new or different that they did with your kid. Every day is a good day to do that.
Amen.
Well, I want to thank you both. This has been such a stimulating conversation, at least for me. I hope it has been for you. I hope it has been for you, dear
Totally.
listeners.
Always is.
Yeah, it's great.
And I know I'm going to get Dreamkeepers, the comic edition, immediately. I have a student teacher in mind that I'm going to be sending it to. That would be my daughter.
Oh, excellent.
And she has a bunch of friends who would be interested in it too. So
Cool.
No, I can't wait to check it out.
Cool. Thank you so much.
TTE is a Podvision production, created and hosted by me, Betsy Burris, and co-hosted by Joe Johnson. Production and audience development support from Julian Androkaya and Andrea Koskaj. Crucial editing by Brad Wells. And the music, which makes me smile and dance every time I hear it, by Tom Burris of Jabbering Trout. Thanks one and all. If you like this episode, text it to a friend. And if you haven't already, sign up for my Substack, where you can become a paid subscriber and get all kinds of goodies, including exclusive podcast episodes that will change your life. That's teachingthroughemotions.com. Thank you for listening.
It's all true, it's all verified.